How's everybody doing today? It's your boy Scion, and this is The Proof is in the Pudding. And today we have a very special guest all the way from Canada. She goes by the name of Katrina. How you feeling today?
I am feeling great, Scion. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get on the show and be featured on here. So super excited. Blessings.
I definitely appreciate you coming through. So let's start in the beginning. Tell the people where you're from.
Well, like you said, I am up here on the north side in
Right.
Toronto, Canada. Shout out to any of my Canadian people out there. I was actually born here, first generation from my family
Right.
to be born in Canada. It's funny because both of my parents actually immigrated here single and then they
Wow.
met in the city. So I'm always joking around about how, like, I'm not a cold person. Like, I don't do the winter right now. It's like blizzard
Right.
and cold outside.
Right now.
So in my head, I'm like, why didn't we immigrate to like San Diego? I got family in Cali and stuff. But you know what? It was just meant to be. So growing up here, I grew up in the city. I was born in the city. And then I actually moved away from the city and grew up in the suburbs. And
Wow.
it's just outside of Toronto in the greater Toronto area. I was raised in Mississauga. And I'd love to say that in that community, I think Mississauga is great for the diversity of our young generations that were kind of coming up when I was. And
Right.
so inside class, I found myself, with a variety of different cultures. And I think the great thing that I loved indulging in, like growing up and in culture and music, was just the diversity again, and being exposed to it, both in school and with friendships. And by being exposed to it, I think we kind of indulge ourselves in new cultures and new musics. And that's kind of what paved the way for me. I was always been such a musically inclined child, and
Right.
like dressing up, being in like my mom's closet, putting on some music and like just dancing as a kid and pretending that you're in like music videos and stuff like
Right.
that. So I loved that creativity aspect of it. And my dad was actually the one that kind of sparked that for me. I
Wow.
remember, growing up, he would kind of like pick up the guitar. He played guitar. He showed me dance videos. He was such a big Michael Jackson fan. And just
Wow.
growing up, indulged in so many like music and arts forms, really cultivated that creative spirit in me. And also kind of, instilled the immigrant kind of traditional ways of, enthusiastic work ethic, coming into environments, wanting to learn more, absorb the environment that I was in, but at the same time, like, continue to want to ask questions and be curious.
Right.
Imagination really played a big part of me growing up, in books and storytelling. So I was such an imaginative kid, and I really liked to play not only in fashion but in film, in sports.
Wow.
Very, in high school, I loved to get involved with different clubs. I used it as kind of like an excuse not to kind of have to hurry home,
Right. Right.
and getting involved with extracurriculars. And I think it really was pivotal for me too. I grew up at first in a two-parent home, and
Okay.
then I grew up around 9. My parents actually divorced, so there was a lot of,
Right.
growth aspects and maturity aspects. I'm actually the eldest of two, so
Okay.
having that, female role in my life constantly there, and growing from those ties essentially, kind of plays into how my journey unfolds.
Right. And that's a wonderful thing right there as I'm listening. So you always had a creative spirit with imagination and stuff like that. And a lot of that plays off in what you do now. So when you look back, when did you first get into style and fashion?
I think I was just kind of like, it was embedded in me.
Right.
It's funny because growing up, when I was literally like toddler, my first word was shoe. Like, kid you
Wow.
not, it was shoe. And like, it was one of those first like object words, I guess, that like I could
Right.
identify and I knew like what it was. Being a kid too, my mom, she was really into 80s fashion and 90s fashion
Right.
growing up. And she had a lot of those vintage pieces. And I'm such a big, firm believer in sustainable fashion. So I loved the storytelling aspect that a lot of these vintage pieces had, because I mean,
Right.
some of my favorite pieces are the ones that like my mom's, you know, given to me, like her 80s Levi's jeans, or those international, you know, blazers made in Russia. Like these are some of the pieces that she's kept in her closet, you know, and has been able to pass down to me. And I love the history and again the
Right.
sustainability behind how fashion kind of evolves. And we all know that fashion, you know, recycles, and you know, old styles become new again. So
Right.
just keeping those pieces timeless has always been kind of it for me. It really inspires how I dress myself, but also work with different clients and kind of getting a taste of what it is that they like.
I definitely understand that. So let me ask you, styles all around the world are different. What are some of the places and the styles that inspire you to come up with your creations and your own style?
Oh, I think Italian fashion has really been a great inspiration for me. I think there's always been a little piece of home in Italy for me and my family, because part of my family actually immigrated directly from Philippines to Italy. So
Wow.
I have like first gen cousins that are full Filipino, but they're Italian, right?
Wow.
So we've been kind of keeping ties, and I'm so long overdue for an Italian Italy trip because I have
Right.
no excuse. I have family out there, but just seeing, you know, their way of life and the culture again through, you know, my family members, and engaging in different types of conversation with them too has been really inspiring. I know early on in my career I was obsessed with New York. I
Wow.
love to indulge myself in the city, and going back and forth from New York too. I definitely felt that go-getter, that hustler mentality that I
Right.
really related to, being from Toronto, being such a young and unique city that's you know, definitely paving its way, and there's just so much that we can kind of learn from each other and each other's culture.
Right. Definitely. And I was just going to get into that. Tell me about the fashion industry out there in Toronto. What is that like?
The fashion industry is actually really great. I think with the ideas and the industry in and itself, it's such a great creative collective to start off here in the city. And I really am looking and hoping to expand that just outside of the city. So our major
Right.
concentration of the entertainment and the fashion industry is in and around Toronto, and realistically in and around some downtown core. And I definitely wanted to expand that because there's so many other different concentrations of different communities and cultures that we can benefit from and definitely engage with outside of Toronto. And there's
Right.
so many talented people, you know, out there. And the way that I see our little concentration of regions is the same way that New York has different boroughs, right? And
Right.
because New York is such a hot, like it has such rich history, you know about the different boroughs and what they kind of bring to the table. And so I feel that Toronto, especially as an emerging city, kind of growing into its own identity too, not only in fashion, but, you know, in entertainment and artistry and creators, that can essentially be part of our story with the different regions and districts in and around, you know, that downtown core in
That makes
Toronto.
that makes sense right there. So you got the music blowing up in Toronto. Tell me what stylists inspire you. Like which stylists do you like right now?
Well, I'm loving the creative direction from a lot of industry individuals that are working with the Fenty lines. I definitely tapping in with SZA's creative director and the creative director for Tiana Taylor. Just some inspiring new creative directing, some new styling that is really paving the way. I love the richness that it has in the 80s and the 90s vibes.
Right.
Bringing that back, it kind of hones down to like my own childhood. So those are definitely, you know, the aspirations that I definitely look up to in terms of for my own craft, and also, you know, looking to expand and network with.
That's definitely dope right there. So like you also style people. So like what's the process if somebody say like if I needed to be styled, how do you come up with the styles for a person and like where do you draw inspiration to do
Well, Scion, the first the first
that?
thing the first thing I would go through with any one of my clients is just like an open consultation. And basically, what I love about what I do is essentially I want to just make sure that what I provide aligns with what you need. Because if it doesn't align, then I can just be giving you ABC textbook work, or
Right.
theories that you don't necessarily like believe in, or it's not necessarily resonating with you. So just opening up that consultation and just having you openly talk about, how you feel about your own style, what kind of pieces do you own, what eras of, music industry, art are you drawn to? Because then, I'm a firm believer that inspiration essentially breeds other inspiration. So if you are looking up to someone because they inspire you, not necessarily just for their image, but what they represent and who they are, as a business, as a brand, as their own person. These are the kind of things that we weave together in order to essentially make the bigger picture of your own individual style. And the great thing about style is that it doesn't have to be cookie cutter. It doesn't have to be just one way. It can be a mixture of multiple ways. So what I've found is, so many people out there are multifaceted, right? They're artists and they're creatives and they're models and they're dancers. And so being able to utilize and see the different lifestyles that all of these people make and ensure that they have a what I call effortless wardrobe that works with them
Right.
versus trying to like put on so many different things. And that in itself, like no one has time to be in
Right.
their
Definitely.
closet trying to like put pieces together. So I've set up consultations and then given actually like a process, like a step-by-step process in which like you can look into your closets and pick out like piece one, piece two, piece three to actually put together complete looks. Because that's what I feel like. I feel that a lot of people just kind of see their items and their clothes as just pieces to a puzzle. And so when they're trying to coordinate their outfit, they just see different pieces. They don't necessarily see the bigger picture. So finding the bigger picture is step one, and then also breaking it down into a formula, into a step-by-step process that's easy for you to understand, because it's something that inspires you, it's something that is driven from inside. Then that's how we can kind of work towards what evidently is your unique style.
That makes a lot of sense right there. So when did you know that you were good in fashion? Besides like your own opinion, when did people start saying, "Hey, you know what? You got a gift there." When did you realize that you were gifted in style?
Oh, I honestly started off in retail. Like I was in the field itself, right? I worked at one of the local malls here, and it was so nice to be in that experience because literally, as you're telling me, there were those instances in the change room with real women that were
Wow.
moms and they were working and they were teachers, and they had to be, they had to go pick up the kids, and then they had to go to soccer practice, and then they had like meetings in the evenings. And so absorbing all of their different stories and almost imagining the different lifestyle that they live and giving them functional pieces that worked with them. I gained all of that insight just being on the field, and from there it really built my client list, some clients that I still have like to this day,
Wow.
because they'd come into my store and it wasn't even necessarily to um, you know interact or buy, but they actually just wanted to engage with me. And so I started to build client lists, and it was in those moments where someone came to me and they're like, do you do this for a living? Because
Right.
I would pay you to
Right. You
do this
should.
for
Right.
me. Right. And so, and that's when the gears started to kind of click. Right. Because a lot of people think that in order to get into styling, you got to work with an agency, or you have to have some sort of representation in order to kind of plug you in.
Right.
Yes, there is that route. But I'm standing here like an example of how I've done it independently and how I've built my business on the multiple experiences that I've had. And it's essentially, grown in the way that it has and developed more as I personally developed as a person.
Right. Can you take me through the process and tell me some of the clients that you have had the pleasure of working with?
Oh, most definitely. I've had a variety of clients that are looking for, business casual. So I've worked on like one-on-one clients because I really believed in the authenticity that, I didn't necessarily need to work with the celebrities in order to get my name out there. I
Right.
wanted to work with the real individual people. And I know that through one going through my story because I really resonated, growing up in a single parent home with just my mom at the time. You know what I
Right.
mean? And seeing her kind of maneuver through everything that she's going through, that really resonated with me and my story. So wanting to kind of pay that forward, worked with a lot of mom entrepreneurs, moms that, are full-time moms and then they have their actual business or they have their side businesses along.
Wow.
I've worked with models. I've worked with bigger production runway shows where I've styled. Over here, it's called the Modern Bride Wedding Show, and it's basically a trade show, and then we have a fashion show component. It's actually the first solo produced fashion show that I've ever done back in
Really?
January of 2020.
Congratulations. Right.
Thank you. Thank you. So just before the pandemic hit, I had to kind of roll with the big
I feel you on that. I feel you on that. So yeah, so let's talk about the pandemic. How has the pandemic affected the fashion industry?
It's definitely impacted the fashion industry a whole lot. I mean, a lot of the fashion events got canceled. A lot of the runway shows got canceled. A lot of the fashion related engagements had to do so much with, the socialization and, the projects in and itself, having teams that contribute to the actual project and having to kind of limit that and put, a whole stop on that. Definitely, people were turning to the virtual world. And
Exactly.
I'm a firm believer to pivot is to prosper. So I really saw that happen in the fashion industry, and working with core teams that were looking to innovate it, that wanted to present something new, stay relevant until, this too shall pass. It was one of those things where we creatively brainstormed on how virtual events, virtual shows can really be conducted, but done
Right.
so in new and creative ways. So we were initially supposed to have a show, a fashion runway show, in January of 2021. Given the entire pandemic, right? We were kind of on the edge about if it was still going to happen or not, and then, Canada had its restrictions, which continued, and we had to cancel that out. So right now we're working on the actual project in itself, in which we've filmed and in the process of putting together an edited full virtual fashion event, and we wanted to
Wow.
make it interactive while still showcasing pieces, accessories, and I'll be hosting it too. So definitely we'll tap back in with you about that.
Definitely. Definitely. So what are some of the designers that y'all work with on this fashion show?
Well, I'm a firm believer in supporting the local and designer and giving those opportunities and those platforms to our Toronto fashion base. So I've worked with some amazing designers. Zoba Martin's a great one of them. A couple of beauty boutiques and bridal boutiques that have also been here, growing and really revolutionizing that industry in itself. We worked with Best for Brides. We've worked with Nana Couture, which is a all couture fashion, bridal customs. All of her stuff comes from Turkey, which is such great materials too, and it really gives you that like customizable opportunity to, create your actual like dream wedding dress. And definitely some designers out here in Toronto that are doing some big things, and some brands that are really promoting good messages out there. I was working with a fashion design that is, their main message was inclusivity. So they kind of broke down, gender barriers, and they wanted to really present their brand as something that didn't have, like a feminine or masculine component to their pieces, right? They wanted to kind of strip away that barrier. So I'm a firm
Yes.
believer in the longevity and the brand messages that I want to continuously be providing and being associated with on bigger platforms, and really watching them grow. I love the cultivation of how, we can collectively come together.
That's definitely dope right there. So it's like you're putting all the pieces together. Let me ask you, what part of the fashion do you like the best, and what part do you enjoy the most?
I You know what? It's that one moment. I was working with a client. We were, in the change room of our retail store, and they were just such a like a hard client to kind of deal with. Sometimes I feel that like I have to go, I'm kind of like a therapist or like a coach, right? When going through, these out of the box perspectives that people are like, no, I'd never wear that color, like that would never look good on me, like and it's just that invitation, that permission to be like, no, give it a try. Like, what's the worst that can happen? You totally hate it?
Right,
Cool. We'll just put it on the don't like pile. You know what I mean?
right,
And so when, like, I know and I can see it, I can see the light in their face, and their, that wow moment or that aha moment that men and women get when they look in the mirror and they're like, damn, I look good, right?
right, right.
Like
Definitely.
out of something that they would have never picked up, like absolutely would have turned the other cheek because it was a certain, style, or it was a certain color that they didn't necessarily think, that they could pull off. But it's amazing the powerful, that switch that kind of turns on when you give someone permission to just try something new. And that's what really gravitated me towards everything that I've been doing in fashion and in coordination. A lot of my involvement and my output into what it is that we create continuously in the fashion industry is just the representation of different stories, and being able to independently but also collectively, tell our own stories and be the ones to continuously tell those stories.
That makes sense right there. So definitely it's the expression of who you are in your story without even speaking through the fashion. So a lot of times when people think about fashion and stylists, they think it's just putting clothes together or just putting clothes on people. But like you're saying, there's a lot more behind it. How long did it take you to get your niche together where you can put the things together and it made sense and then you enjoy doing
I think for me, it was actually going through my own personal experience too, right? I mean, prior to about 3 years ago, I actually endured a fitness journey. And so I've been through those stages where I've looked in the mirror and I didn't necessarily liked what I was kind of seeing back.
it? Right.
And that really, really set the pace on how hey Samantha, I see you, girl. Hey queen.
Hey, peace.
And it really, yeah, so it really set the tone for what I wanted to do. And essentially going back to the question here, I essentially wanted to move forward in that direction, and bring to light what that like lack of confidence that I was
Right,
feeling, right? Like I was looking in the mirror, and I didn't necessarily like what I was seeing. And so my confidence was then down.
right.
And it was in those instances too that I found that my wardrobe saved me, because I'm sure everyone can, relate to, when, they put on boss ass outfit and they just can conquer the world. You know what I mean? Or,
Right.
where they can look and feel good. And once you look good, it feels like that armor that can kind of just like get you through the
I,
day and whatnot.
right. I can do this. I can do this today. Right.
Right. And like you just go out into the world and you slay it. And it's just that walking with your best foot forward, knowing that, you can confidently own who you are. And it's something to be proud of. And so I feel that with style, with clothes, yes, it's an external accessory, but at the same time, um, it's an added expression of creativity, of who you are, of who you want to become, even, right? Because when we put on these clothes, we own that lifestyle.
That's a fact right there. We have a question in the comments. Somebody says, "Is the fashion industry as difficult as Kanye speaks of?" Kanye West.
um I mean, every industry has their difficulties. It's not like it's not to say that fashion is more or less, because depending on where you come from, your own story, I think that's what essentially sets you apart in the fashion industry. Because, you can be in the fashion industry and not necessarily be working towards a common goal or a collective goal, or a progressive way of thinking and interacting with fashion. And I think the greatness that's kind of emerging from the fashion industry is the unique take on how we're being engaged with fashion. There's been a level of rapidness and fast pace to the fashion industry, especially with so much mass consumption of it, that we're kind of starting to lose the creative and the art behind it. And so it's so great when you do enter into the fashion industry, that you've also not only done your research, but you've kind of tuned in to what it is that you want to progressively create, or what it is that you're getting into the fashion industry for. Like anything, you get into it for the wrong reasons, and it won't
Right.
necessarily work out to your favor.
That's true. That's very true right there. So being a stylist, what inspires you the most outside of your story and stuff like that? And then seeing the people faces. I know you said that makes you feel good, but when was the moment when you did a style on a performance or production that made you feel the most proudest?
Um, I think as a stylist, I'm going to kind of throw creative director into here too. My definitely seeing how systems and operations can really impact workflow. And it was one of those things, being in leadership roles and positions in previous work jobs, that I've really been able to absorb what it means to embody what a good leader is. And, thinking about these circumstances, it really plays into the coordination and the overall welcoming, and that trust factor that you essentially have to instill in your team. And so moving forward in a lot of business related interactions, and also in my styling consultations, when I, creative consult for, visuals or fashion shows, for example, a lot of it has to do with creating, a systematic coordination plan that allows people's creativity to naturally show. And I think diversity also has a lot to play with it, because, we're such diverse individuals that, again, by incorporating those individuals into the process, it just makes it so much more authentic. And so the product in itself just speaks towards that specific message or that specific value.
That makes sense. It sounds complicated. So let me ask you, how long have you been in the fashion industry and also a creative director? How did you get that position? And I know that you put in the work, you worked your way up, but tell me about some of the most challenging parts. So somebody that's trying to get into the industry, from your experiences, can you share that with them so they can know what to expect getting in the industry?
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the networking aspect of what this industry essentially kind of brings up for us. You know, we have the opportunity to network and connect with different individuals. And I would say, you know, being a young creative, you know, just kind of like dabbling in on entrepreneurship. I never really had like a role model to kind of walk me through, you know, what business is or what does an entrepreneur journey even, you know, start or look like. And in those challenges, I knew that at times I was going to need a mentor and I was going to forever be that student. And so when you go through, you know, the parallel level ups of life, you know, you're staying genuine to your path and you're going to be able to kind of go through those growing pains in order to kind of break through into this new person, this new evolved version of yourself. And so in those challenges, in those growing pains, I've, you know, definitely had to let go of relationships that no longer served me. I
Right.
definitely had to find myself in those moments to really be like, let me take a step back and really reevaluate what direction I want to go into, because we can stay busy and we can think that we're being busy by, you know, the type of tasks that we're doing throughout the day, but you know, we could find ourselves very quickly, you know, moving in a circle versus moving forward. So
Right.
finding those ones that are like surrounding myself with those ones that are above me, that I've recognized, you know, working with and aspiring to be like and become. And then that like dividing that fine line between, you know, mentor and mentee, you know, and I'm
Right.
finding before, I was very much in that student mentality. I think I've always been in that student mentality, growing up. Like I just love to absorb my environment for, you know, what it is and kind of take what it is that I like about it, leave everything that, you know, doesn't work for me, and then just add in my own flavor and like how I can make it my own, or, you know, how can I make it better, or like what was missing in those interactions or in those environments. So I'm definitely, I still find myself, you know, balancing between the two, but definitely owning what that growth looks like, and even going through those growing pains, like allow yourself to sit in them and grow from them and heal from them, because if we don't do the hard work then it'll just kind of like come around
Right.
to bite us.
Definitely. It definitely will come back around. And you said an important thing, surrounding yourself with people that's pulling you up that you can learn from. And I see that you do that a lot. So you also help other people come in as well, correct?
Yeah, I'm such a big activist for paying it forward. And I'm constantly engaging with people differently. You know, I think, again, going back to the fast pace and the rapidness of everything that we experience, a lot of that has to do with our social media and the platforms that we engage
Right.
with. And a lot of them are, you know, like we kind of just be scrolling mindlessly and then we find ourselves, you know, on social media for hours. Whereas I'd rather take those different engagements and utilize them differently, and be talking, you know, me and Scion, we were directly in each other's DMs. We initially heard each other on, you know,
Right.
Clubhouse, and then we were able to have that authentic generation of this relationship,
Right.
by actually getting to know each other and having open and honest conversations. And I think the challenge with having that, openness is that means that personally you're going to have to kind of get vulnerable. You're going to have to ask for what it is exactly you're looking for. You're going to have to come to these conversations, with an intention, right? And so if we haven't thought about these things before, then they'll definitely won't be the forefront of how we engage and how we, connect with, the right people.
Exactly. That's real right there. And you said a powerful thing in the beginning. You said you did it independently without a machine behind you. So tell me about that journey a little bit. What is it like on your own versus being connected in a circle, or I would say the circle, and versus doing it on the independent route, making it on your own and earning your name and your own brand and reputation. What was that like?
I enjoyed the process. It definitely took more out of me. It required a little bit more of self-investment on my end, which is something that I'm a firm believer in anyways. And so I invested a lot into my own individual talents, and those passions essentially led the way for me. And it was allowing them to maneuver me through my journey, what I was interested in. It started to really cut down the dead weight. Like I knew that I didn't want to work here. I wanted to work here. I knew
Right.
that I didn't want to be in this position. I wanted to be in the other. So giving me those different options allowed me to then be creatively free in what I decided I wanted to engage with, or my content is very special to me. So how can I actually put it out there with purpose and power, instead of it just being a momentarily piece of an enjoyment that you get to enjoy for like a second and then you kind of just
Right.
pass through it, right? Um, and so that essentially gave me the tools and the resources. And by doing my own, also my own research, I think, when we take the independent route and we kind of lose track of having to kind of go back and do our research. And what's crazy about it is that we're kind of all overexposed to so much information. So I
Right.
always I always find that we're digging for information and we're looking for those hidden gems and we're looking for the wisdom inside, but definitely connecting with the right people. And I always found with a lot of business relations too, a lot of B2B collaborations and projects that I've worked on, it's been so great to actually know the individual behind the business, to know the individual
Right.
that's behind the brand, because when you connect with people on based on their values and their morals, that's already a step in the right direction, right? It's already
That's,
giving you that foundation that you can know, like, and trust this individual.
that's true. That's very true right there. So in the next 3 to 5 years, where do you see yourself going in the fashion industry?
In the next 3 to 5 years, I definitely would love to continuously creative direct. I love the visual arts components of not only fashion photography, but also moving into dance visuals, moving into creative fashion, lifestyle pieces that essentially not necessarily mimic, but they embody the authentic art forms, whether that is paying tribute to the old vintage ways or recreating and creating new modern innovations when it comes to fashion, when it comes to lifestyle. I think it goes kind of hand in hand. So being able to do that virtually is also something that's very important to me, because even if you ask me this question, 10 years ago, I always saw myself moving and traveling, interacting and helping serve different parts of creative collectives, whether that be here in Canada, in the States, in Europe, wherever it might be. I always found myself being able to do that. And now that we have the opportunity to, once everything opens up and we have that opportunity, I'd love for everything that I'm already establishing to be on virtual platforms so it can continuously just become that norm. And I think that's what it's moving towards, anyways.
That's true. That's true. So we talked about different places of the world. How many places have you been, and which places did you enjoy the most?
So I've been back home to the Philippines more than 3 times. It was actually so interesting. The second last time I went, the first 2 times I was fairly young when I went back to the Philippines,
Okay.
but the third time, the second last time, was when I was really kind of going through those growing phases, and I was new to both career, and at the same time I was finishing up my last year of university. I was doing my thesis. In university, I studied English and human geography. And
Wow.
so my thesis was on human geography and how space and people interacted um, in space. So, how space and society, sorry, interacted
Right.
in a developing world. And so my thesis was actually based off of Tokyo, Japan. And
Wow.
that same year, I went back home to the Philippines. So I had a very interesting dynamic between um, actual physical location of where I was and it being, some sort of homage to who I am and my own self identity. And then
Right.
being able to kind of connect that with society and how culture kind of plays into how we interact with not only each other, but the communities that inhabit that environment. And so I found myself kind of picking up little hidden gems while I was back home, and that really rooted who I was. And coming back just kind of with that refreshing idea has really paved the way. And I was able to go to LA. There was one time in I think it was in like 2016. New York and Toronto are about like 8 hours, and so I just take the drive up, stay for a weekend. Some summers I spent with my auntie in New York. I've been to Florida. I've done conventions in Orlando. Jamaica is definitely my second home. I think it's
Wow.
like it's that island vibe because the Philippines
Right.
also is a series of islands. And so I remember landing in Jamaica and I was like, this feels like home, because it actually it gave me
Right.
that at home feeling that I felt when I went to the Philippines. And I think also with Jamaican culture being so infused to our lifestyle and our culture here in Toronto, there's so much influence. And even growing up in high school, it was just something that I've definitely always wanted to go to. And being able to go there and experience it for myself was amazing. It was like a whole soul search trip.
Right. Right. I was just gonna say that. Just seeing that. So you grab inspiration from all over and you bring it back. So tell me a little bit about the fashion industry in the Philippines, and then what is the fashion industry like in Jamaica, and what inspiration did you draw from each place that you went to?
Yeah, definitely from the Philippines. So the Philippines actually has a huge market in pageantry. And so the Philippines, both on like local, domestic, and international levels, has pretty much participated in pageants for a number of years. And so the fashion industry actually really revolves around a lot of this international media exposure that the pageantry world has. And so a lot of the connections that are happening in and around the Philippines kind of stems from this. And tapping into that market was really inspiring, was really interesting, both
Right.
in radio, TV, and media, but also looking at the younger generation that was kind of growing up in this new, that normal of looking up to these
Right.
role models that were being represented in pageants and wanting to aspire that and cultivate their own individual talent in order for them to continuously develop that and then dream of joining a pageant or being on TV. So a lot of the fashion entertainment industry is definitely interconnected. And I love the aspects of giving back to the community and
Right.
looking at the younger generations that are looking at these pageants, that are looking at it from a different perspective, and they're inspiring to be these individuals one day. So giving back to the community is kind of like that nice circle back that really fuses the fashion and the entertainment.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. So not only do you do fashion, you do dance as well. Do you think they go hand in hand, fashion and dance? There's both expressions. So tell me about the dance, because I've seen a couple of videos of you dance, and like when I first seen them, it kind of took me, because you're passionate about your dance. Not just dancing, going through the motions. It's like you're really expressing yourself. So tell me how being a creative director in fashion and dance, how they all go hand in hand, and what inspired you to get into dancing.
It's funny because the reason why I got into dance was because I found that a lot of my creative energy was just being infused in work, and work being styling and creative directing. And so I needed that, essentially like that creative outlet that kind of I could be selfish with. That was just mine. I didn't have to give it to work. I didn't have to, necessarily expose it or brand it in a way that had to be for work. It was just my own. And so I remember in my early on stages of training, getting into the dance studio, it was just really one of those things where I could leave all the BS that I had, and leave it at the door and enter into the studio and just being able to express myself without not having to say a word, and allowing my body and allowing it to kind of leave and release. So it really became that outlet for me of creative
Wow.
expression. Um, and it was definitely something that I cultivated in those early stages, and just seeing how everything aligned for me at the time. It really essentially moved into a new space for me, and opening up that venture, I just found that by putting myself out there again, people were resonating with it and people were gravitating towards it. And the ones that have inspired me to take that leap of faith and do something in regards to dance is, also, again, that student mentor mentee dynamic, that student
Right.
teacher dynamic that I myself have, essentially been always dabbling on. And I've always played in between the lines of both student and teacher. And being able to confidently do that is just inspiring, again, a new audience and in a new way that I've always essentially done with style, because I feel that the messaging behind my business and my brand and what Special Case is, the empowerment and the confidence building of what style is. And then being able to just infuse that with my own personal passion
Right.
that I've discovered with dance has really put me in a really cool new like sphere
Right.
of these creatives and artists that are also looking to do the same. Because I mean, how many times do we meet an artist that also models, that also sings, that also dances, that also songwrites,
Right.
and all of these things essentially make who we are. And by leading by example, it just helps me show that we shouldn't be afraid to allow our personal growth and our business development be a side by side story. Allow it to evolve and grow with you.
Right. That makes sense right there. So, how difficult was it coming from creative director to dance? And where do you draw your inspiration? Do you come up with your own dances or?
Yeah, I do. I do come up with my own dances. I do my own choreography, and honestly, just going onto YouTube and seeing other dancers, other choreographers doing their thing, putting their own content out there, it definitely just embodies like what confidence is, and being able to step out of your own comfort zone and express yourself. So the best part about dance for me is being able to just dim the lights, have that one-on-one experience with just yourself, and just allow your body to do it. Because even as dancers, we sometimes feel like we have to be that cookie cutter of just one type of dance, or like one genre of music that we want to be experts in,
Right.
and training too. It's kind of just this one way of doing things, when realistically dance is an expression, style is an expression, and being
Correct.
able to confidently do that and embody that, you kind of got to look inward before you can express it, right?
That's a fact on the outside. So, what's your favorite genre of dance? And yeah, let's start with that.
So my actual favorite genre of dance, I would say, is more a style than it is a genre, because when I was training, I was trained in a heel. So I actually heels dance, as you know, and that's a
Yes.
specific training and technique when it comes to dance. So these are styles, and with that style, we take different genres like hip hop and jazz funk and contemporary, and we just do it in a heel.
Wow. So, how difficult was that making the transition to heels, because a lot of people, that's a big thing. This heels dance is a big thing, and it's not easy. So how long did it take you to get it, and then what inspired you? I know all women, they grow up in heels, but when did you make the transition, and how was that to get
It's
where you
so
are now?
it's so funny because whenever like people ask me like how do I, get started with heels dancing, or I can never do that and all this stuff, and I'm like, well, have you ever like jammed out in your car? Have you ever gone to the club? Girl, you a heels dancer.
Right,
But for me, it actually just ended up being my style of choice. I think just growing up, seeing it kind of be present. Like, I mean, I got my first pair of heels when I was like 13 because I had entered a pageant myself, right? So
right,
I've always had kind of that interest in that style of dance, and just looking at Beyonce and J Lo, and just seeing their added flavor to dance, to hip hop, to jazz funk, those types of dance, and how it was just like even more boss bitch because it was oh sorry, excuse my French,
right. Now you get, you
but
fine. No. You get, you family here. You get.
but it kind of just it gave off that fierce energy, because it's like, yeah, I'm gonna body this choreography and I'm gonna do it in heel.
Right, and heels. Right. That's dope right there. So what are some of your best experiences in dance?
Oh, so pre-COVID, me and my team here in Toronto, it's a dance community called Army of Sass. We have multiple locations in and around Canada and also in the United States. But basically, they're a dance community, and in Toronto, every season we would put on these shows, like these legendary production shows. And if you think about basically like 5 different dance classes, all from beginner level to intermediate professional level, and they're putting on production shows of like The Wizard of Oz in their own
Wow.
way, of Nightmare Before Christmas in their own way, of like classic tributes of Beyonce in their own way. And so it was
Wow.
just, it's such an empowering community where I was able to kind of grow in myself as I started as a beginner and worked my way up into advanced and intermediates, heels classes, and having that experience, and then being able to put on a live show, being on stage for the first time and putting on a live show, something clicked in me that like I was just obsessed.
After that, so it was like that was
It's a
it.
wrap.
I feel you on that. So what are some of the places that you have danced, and which places did you enjoy the most, where you received the best?
Um, Definitely, we have a club here, the Mod Club out in Toronto. We had some great pieces out there. I've also danced for a lot of communities and charities as well. Um, and we've danced in like local church basements, and put it on fundraising shows at community centers, and did like little workshops with the kids. I've also done walk classes for my models out there that were looking for a little bit of more techniques, in
Right.
their model walk, and how to actually properly weight place yourself in a heel. So, being able to kind of engage in so many different environments, allowed me to tap into so many different audiences that kind of needed what it is that I was providing, and used it again as a learning opportunity to be like, okay, like what are these people actually looking for? Because yeah, I can show them how to walk in a heel, I can show them how to dance in the heel, but what are they really gaining out of this experience? And a lot of the time it was that confidence and it was that empowerment that they felt, when they kind of nailed that choreography, or they were able to kind of let loose and have fun.
Right. That makes sense. And you do a lot of things. You definitely do a lot of things. And you learned how to brand this all together. And they all go hand in hand. And you're helping a lot of people. So let's talk about Special Case. We're not done with the dance. But let's talk about Special Case. What inspired you, and what is Special Case all about?
Special Case is my own style consultancy. It's my little business baby. It's the pillars, the foundation, the framework of what it is that I do. Essentially, Special Case's message is to essentially be able to love yourself first. And by doing the internal work first, we're then able to express and inspire who it is that we are uniquely. And it's actually a play on words. So, like, special Kace is my name. So my name
Right.
is Katrina Carroll. And so in my family, everyone calls me Casey. And so Casey got short form to Case. And
Wow.
then it's a pun on the word case, like CASE.
Right.
So the motto and the meaning behind what it is that I myself have grown and developed my own individual talents, and by doing that has really paved the way of who I am as a creative and as an entrepreneur. And if I can do it, then everyone out there, like you too, are a special case.
Wow.
CASE.
Wow. That's dope right there. And that's deep right there, because we all have brands, but for people that don't know how to go about branding, they may have different businesses and stuff like that. How did you learn about branding? And then even with Special Case, you're helping other people. If someone needed your services, how would they contact you? And how walk me through what that's like, the consultation.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So essentially, at Special Case, I help creatives, artists, influencers, and entrepreneurs kind of take what their individual talents, their passion, their story is, and really break through into their brand as a brand identity. And I'm a firm believer that our self identity and our brand identity essentially align for us, and that is essentially what drives our purpose. So for any of creatives out there just looking to go through a mind to map, sometimes we get overwhelmed with everything that is involved with business, because I mean, we're our own marketers, we're our own associates, we're our own CEOs, we're our own bookkeeper.
Right.
And so there's so many different aspects to what entrepreneurship is that we can get overwhelmed in it. And so sometimes, yes, we need to focus in and be super clear on what our vision is, but at the same time, that vision we can't actually get there without that step-by-step process. And so Special Case really works with strategy in regards to you as a brand, in terms of your content, in terms of the brand's messaging that you want to get out there, to really show up in front of a niche market and get exposed to the brands and the businesses that you want to be associated with.
That makes sense. And how long did it take you for it to snap to say, yo, instead of me doing this for somebody else, I can do this for myself and others? How long did it take you to get that for the click?
Actually, I remember exactly when it happened. The whole reason why I got into entrepreneurship in general was I've always had that side hustle of styling. That has always been my main bread and butter. And when I was actually going through my own corporate career, I was exposed to a lot of digital marketing conversations and also business strategy tactics and methods, and how we did that both online and offline. And
Wow.
so, again, being a sponge, being a student in those environments, I was actually fired from that corporate job.
Wow.
They were like, "Yeah, we're good. We're going to let you go." Gave me my severance package and it was over. And it was in that moment, I'm a firm believer that it was all God's plan. He works his ways in
Definitely.
mysterious ways. It was one of those, I looked at myself in the mirror, I'm like, am I going to actually start to do business, or am I going to continue to play with business? And that's the
Right.
mindset switch that we kind of have to have, because you can tell yourself, you can wake up every day and be like, yes, I'm an entrepreneur, but if that mindset switch has not turned on yet, then you're going to continuously just always be living that lifestyle and not necessarily have made that switch, have made that pivot to who you really want to be.
Exactly. Exactly. And even with that, so you started before the pandemic. How has the branding situation changed from before the pandemic to pre-pandemic?
So definitely just a need to have an online presence. I think, we've been talking about this by being able to kind of maneuver towards virtual platforms and being able to confidently show up in these. And a lot of the content strategies and the marketing strategies that I started to notice revolved in and around these social media platforms in specific. And so
Yes.
when we are being so overly consumed and also digesting a lot of this content, people were starting to devalue who they were and what they brought to the table because they were being, I would say, overly saturated with
Right.
so much different content on the internet, right?
Right.
And when we refuse to make that parallel link between who we are as a business, and what those strategies look like, we kind of start to lose ourselves. And the thing with Special Case and what I definitely want to develop as a strategist in branding is ensuring that we're rooted in those individual pillars, the foundations of who it is that you are, and work as a mentor, as a confident coach, in order to strategically maneuver through the different platforms with the different audiences that we essentially expose ourselves to. And I'm a firm believer that, when we put content out there, we don't do it mindlessly. We don't do it just for momentary value. Like, we do it with purpose, we do it with intention. And once we continuously do those things, then the right people are going to be the ones that gravitating towards you.
You said a powerful thing right there. The right people. It could be the wrong people. It could be everybody's gravitating, but you want those right people. And you said
Right.
moving with purpose. So let me ask you, what are three common mistakes that people make when they don't know, they haven't changed their mindset? They're just out here trying to move wondrously. They're trying to build a brand. What are the three mistakes people make?
I think the first one I would say is not connecting with their why. Their why is such an important, I would say, backbone to who you are and what your business essentially is. So definitely connecting with their why is a struggle that I've seen. Ensuring that you know what your brand's purpose is. So there's a difference between your why and what the difference between your brand's purpose. Like, what is the purpose that your brand is actually trying to get out there? And then people don't have their avatar client written down. So whoever
Wow.
it is that your business is talking to, that avatar should have a name, they should have an age, they should have all of the things that they're interested in, all of the things that they're engaged with. Do they have kids? Like, how much money do they make? Could they even afford your services? And so a lot of those people kind of lose in on that because people are scared to kind of niche down, because they're like, why am I going
Right.
to niche down into such a small market when I can kind of expose myself to all? Well, like we said, we want to expose ourselves to the right people. So
That's
if
the right people.
these avatars, if these clients have specificalities to who it is that you're looking to engage with, then it's so much easier to go out there and find them.
That's true, right there. Having a purpose and a niche market, and like you said, when you're trying to reach everybody, it's kind of like you're doing everything and doing nothing at the same time, almost.
Right, right.
Right, right, right. So definitely. So we're talking about building a brand and strategizing. How important is the marketing? How important is that?
Definitely marketing is up there in terms of importance. I
Right,
would say that marketing and branding itself sometimes gets conflicted, and we merge those two things together when actually the strategies behind those two are actually completely different. So
right,
branding is who you are as a person and as a business, and what it is that you are actually presenting yourself to the table with. And the market are the people that's actually surrounding the table, right?
right, right,
So having those two differences in mind, marketing is definitely more so relating to the individual on the side of the screen, whereas branding is more related to who you are as a person and what you bring to the table. So I think that marketing in and itself, you can have all this content, but if it's not speak the right languages, if it's not being presented to the people on the actual platform that they use, that they're always engaged with, then again, you're just putting out content momentarily. You're just putting out content mindlessly. Whereas with branding and strategy, and infusing that with your marketing strategy can then get you in right people again.
That makes sense right there. So how important is numbers and analytics?
Numbers and analytics kind of roadmap you, right? It
Right.
kind of gives you that roadmap in which, you know, you're looking for the boxes that you kind of have to check off.
We're having a little technical difficulties at the moment. We're going to wait and see, give her a minute to see if she comes back on. We're now, again, sitting here with Special Kace. We were talking about marketing and branding. We're going to give her a few minutes. Hopefully, if she can't get back, we'll reschedule and resume. But we're going to give it a few minutes to see if she can get back on.